Hi everyone, it's Mr. Tristan and welcome to episode 8 of our Survivor 50 recap. Now in my previous video, I forgot to mention what I thought about Dee getting voted out. Um, I love Dee, but I think that her move of blindsiding Charlie, in hindsight, was not the best decision because it led Jonathan to distrust her, and it seemed that the rest of the tribe was on board with Jonathan as opposed to Dee. So, I still like Dee. She's obviously proven to be a good player because she won. But let's move on to this episode. So, since Tiffany has had her name written down 4 times at the previous tribal, obviously she felt like she was alone and likely could have been the next one voted out. Although, if I was there and Tiffany was completely on her own, I would have pulled her in as like a number, you know? That would have been the smart thing to do. That way, it helps you get further into the game. Jonathan, Chrissy, and Stephanie advised Coach to lay low after domineering the previous vote. And the thought that came to my head was, you're asking Coach to lay low? Coach has never been one to lay low. If anyone has seen Coach in the previous 3 times he's played Survivor, you know that he's never one to lay low. Later on, Coach tried to talk to Tiffany and actually lied to her that he didn't push out her name, but she didn't believe him. And to be honest, I don't blame her because the way that Coach was like completely silent at one point during the conversation, that just meant that he was trying to come up with a very convincing lie and he just couldn't come up with it. Coach is not a very good liar. I will say that. Still, I find it very hard to hate Coach. Still, he plays a very messy game. But man, that dude is funny. The guy's been calling himself the Dragon Slayer for almost 20 years. So then a boat comes by, and the tribe mates were told that they had to divide themselves into pairs ahead of the next challenge. Obviously, since there were 13 people left, one person was not going to be chosen. And the way that they chose was everyone put their shots in the dark in a bag. And whichever one they pull out, that person would not be paired with anyone. And the one that they pulled out was Cirie. And I was like, wow, I did not see that coming. So that left the other 12 to divide themselves into pairs. The following pairs were as follows: Aubrey and Rick, Chrissy and Coach, Christian and Jonathan, Emily and Rizzo, Joe and Tiffany, and Ozzy and Stephanie. When the tribe got to the immunity challenge, they were informed as to why they were put into pairs. So the way this worked was one pair was going to win immunity and one pair was going to be voted out. Now, everybody was still going to vote as individuals at tribal council. However, they would each be voting for one pair. So it's like, in a way, you're voting for 2 people. Because Cirie was not paired up with anyone, she was automatically immune for the next vote. But she was also sent to Exile Island, which I don't think was new for Cirie. I think Cirie has been to Exile Island in the past, but So the way the challenge worked was everyone had to go through an obstacle course, and the first 3 pairs to finish would move on to the final round, which was a table maze. The 3 pairs that finished were Ozzy and Stephanie, Aubrey and Rick, and Joe and Tiffany. And when it came to the puzzle maze, the winners were Joe and Tiffany. So not only did they get immunity, but they also got reward in the form of spaghetti and wine. So while they're eating spaghetti, Joe reveals to Tiffany that he wrote her name down, but he started pledging his loyalty to her moving forward, which I don't know how long that's going to last, but hey, we'll see. At Exile Island, Cirie realized that she had to compete in a challenge. So in this challenge, there were 2,000 coconuts on the beach. Like, just let that sink in for a moment. 2,000 coconuts. how do you even find 2,000 coconuts? Like, that's just crazy. But anyway, Suri had only a certain amount of time to find one coconut that was marked with, I think it was like a phoenix. And if she manages to find that coconut, she would get to return to camp and have the right to vote at that tribal council. If she didn't, then she would have to stay the night at the Exile Island, which I don't think anybody would want. At some point, she had to sit down and she started crying. Like, I think this is the hardest I've ever seen Suri cry, because this seemed very, very physically demanding. And I don't blame her, because, I mean, for her to be out there in the hot sun, searching through 2,000 coconuts, only needing to find just one, like, I don't know if I would be able to do it. But eventually, Suri managed to find the coconut with the phoenix, and she got to go back to camp. Back at camp, Emily was pushing for Chrissy and Coach to be voted out due to their alliance. But Rizzo was leaning more towards voting Aubrey and Rick to prevent them from playing the middle. Meanwhile, Chrissy wanted to blindside Emily and Rizzo in order to flush out Rizzo's idol. When Suri got back to camp and she was informed that Emily and Rizzo's names were out there, she rallied the votes to vote out Chrissy and Coach in order to protect Rizzo. So those were the three names that came up. And I mean, I think everybody knows who I wanted out. I mean, I'm not naming anyone in particular. But yeah, anyway. So at Tribal Council, upon hearing that his name was out there, Rick decided to pull out his fake idol, which caused a major scramble amongst the tribe. Which honestly, that's become one of my favorite things. It's like a live tribal where people are just getting up off their seats, going to each other, and they start whispering into people's ears. Half the time, I don't even know what they're saying, but it's still entertaining. And Dee even had a front row seat to it, since she was the first jury member. When it came down to the votes, Coach played his shot in the dark, and it was not safe. Chrissy and Coach ended up being the pair voted out in a 10-to-1 vote. And I just thought, dang, that sucks. What was funny was Joe said that he could not vote out Chrissy and Coach based on principle. But when the votes were revealed, Joe did, in fact, vote for Chrissy and Coach. I don't know why he would say that if he was going to do it anyway. Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me. So the other pairs that got votes were Aubrey and Rick, which, if I remember correctly, that was from Jonathan. And then Emily and Rizzo, which was voted for by Chrissy. What did I think about Chrissy and Coach being voted out? Let's start with Chrissy. To be honest, I actually liked Chrissy this season. I mean, she didn't really do too much, and she was a target early on because of her over-the-top mothering. However, listening to her and her stories, like, I actually started to have a soft spot for her. And I did feel bad because I feel like this vote out was not really against her specifically. It was more against Coach. And Chrissy is just guilty by association since she was paired up with him. So I do feel bad for Chrissy. And now Coach, I mean, honestly, I don't care how many people dislike Coach. I don't. I actually enjoyed Coach. He was quite a character on the show for so many years. You know, the Dragon Slayer. And, I mean, he has played a very messy game. But he was just very entertaining to me. And if anyone thinks what he has done is not entertaining, well, I don't know what to tell you. Because if you don't find that entertaining, I really don't know what you consider to be entertainment. And if you know nothing about Coach, well, no fault to you. But yeah, I really liked Coach, and I hate that he got voted out. But I mean, in a way, he did it to himself because his game was pretty messy. So now there's 11 players left. Everyone knows about Rick's fake idol, although they don't know that it's fake. Rick initially said he was going to play it at that tribal council, but then he came up with some story to tell Aubrey, which was he couldn't play at that tribal. He had to wait until the next tribal. I think Aubrey will probably be angry when she finds out that that wasn't even real to begin with. But in a way, it did help them at that tribal because there were some people that were considering voting Aubrey and Rick. And after Rick pulled out his fake idol, I think some of those people decided to just switch their votes to Chrissy and Coach. So yeah, we're down to 11 people left. And there's still a certain amount of days left. And I'm really curious to see how the rest of this season goes. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like. And if you haven't already, subscribe for more. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.